Alien Prince shocked. Human's joy defies everything he knows. Comment below where you're watching from. The twin suns of Virelia cast long, fractured shadows over the crystalline plains. The jagged towers of the alien city glimmered like frozen fire, humming with energy that humans could barely comprehend. Every alien moved with exact precision, a symphony of order where mistakes were unthinkable. To them, life was rules, discipline, and probability. But for Ethan Marlowe, rules were suggestions and probability had never kept him alive. His small human ship had torn through the upper atmosphere in a blaze of sparks before crashing into the northern ice fields. The hull groaned and cracked, leaving him trapped inside for precious moments. When he finally kicked open the hatch, the cold air hit him like a fist. Frost stung his face. Blood ran from a cut on his forehead. Yet his first instinct was not fear. It was laughter, rough, ragged, but alive. Perfect, he muttered, surveying the wreckage. Couldn't have picked a better day for a vacation. Virelia's sensors flared in the distance. Kaelrin, the young alien prince, hovered silently in his observation platform high above the city. He had heard of humans before, fragile, short-lived, reckless, but he had never expected to see one survive a fall like this. The being in front of him should be screaming, begging, pleading for mercy. Instead, the human moved with determination. He checked his tools, salvaged broken wires, and even laughed when a panel sparked in his hands. The prince's curiosity burned hotter than the twin suns. No species in his archives had ever displayed this combination of courage and joy in the face of disaster. The human's resilience defied the laws of probability. Kaelrin's tentacles twitched in disbelief. Ethan began improvising repairs, his hands working faster than any alien engineer could follow. He wrapped wires with scraps of metal, jury-rigged coolant lines, and welded broken panels with sparks flying in every direction. Each step was calculated yet reckless. Every move carried risk. A wrong connection could fry the system, or worse, ignite the entire ship. He did it anyway because fear was a luxury humans could not afford when survival demanded action. Suddenly the ice beneath the ship groaned. A hidden crevasse threatened to swallow the wreckage whole. Ethan froze, feeling the ground tremble beneath his boots. His heart pounded, yet he did not panic. Instead, he scanned the ice, measured angles in his mind, and shifted the hull just enough to keep it from toppling. He balanced the weight like a tightrope walker, relying on instinct, intelligence, and sheer nerve. Kaelrin leaned closer to the observation glass, his golden eyes narrowing. Humans were supposed to panic under pressure, but this one laughed while teetering on death. It was infuriating. His species prided itself on control, order, and careful planning. And yet here was a creature defying logic, thriving in chaos. The prince felt something unfamiliar stir inside him, curiosity laced with dread. As Ethan worked, the wind shifted. A jagged shard of ice broke loose from a nearby cliff and flew toward him. He rolled just in time, letting the shard embed itself into the frozen ground. Frost bit his cheek, and a streak of blood ran down his temple. Still he smiled. "You're going to have to try harder than that," he whispered to the storm. Then came the first sign of real danger. The Virelian defense network, attuned to intruders, activated. Alien sentinels emerged from the shadows, tall, sleek, with limbs like blades and eyes glowing crimson. They moved silently but with lethal precision, encircling Ethan in a perfect formation. Most beings would have frozen, knowing resistance was futile. But Ethan crouched low, scanning, thinking, planning. A plan formed instantly. Using the ship's remaining power, he would create a diversion, draw the sentinels close and slip past them. It was dangerous. He might not survive the attempt. But humans had a saying he often repeated in his mind: better to act than to die waiting. He tore a piece of the hull, twisted wires, and triggered a small electrical discharge. Sparks danced across the ice, reflecting off the sentinels' metal surfaces. Their sensors flared, momentarily confused. Ethan sprinted, sliding over the ice, heart hammering, adrenaline screaming. Each second counted. One misstep and he would be shredded before Kaelrin's eyes. From above, the prince felt his pulse quicken. This tiny human, unarmed and fragile, was facing death with a grin, improvising with nothing but courage and wit. Something in Kaelrin's mind shifted. The humans were supposed to fear, to flee, to break. And yet this one challenged the impossible. Ethan reached the edge of the ice crevasse, just as the sentinels recovered and turned toward him. The ice groaned again, wider and deeper this time. He jumped, using a chunk of debris to vault over the opening. For a heartbeat, time froze. Then he landed on solid ground, rolling to absorb the impact. The sentinels halted at the edge, their glowing eyes fixed on the human who should have perished in their grasp. Ethan breathed hard, blood freezing on his face, but he laughed aloud, the sound echoing across the plains. Kael'ren could not look away. That laugh, that impossible human laugh, it changed everything. And as Ethan turned to continue toward the ship, Kael'ren realized that this was only the beginning. The humans' ingenuity, courage, and joy were not weaknesses, they were weapons. Weapons that could challenge an empire. And the next challenge was already coming. Ethan's lungs burned as he sprinted across the frozen plains, the wreckage of his ship glinting behind him. The sentinels were fast, their metallic limbs clicking against ice with a terrifying rhythm. Every step he took had to be precise, every decision immediate. One mistake and he would be crushed, shredded, or frozen into the crystal plains. Most humans would panic. Ethan grinned. Most humans weren't him. He ducked behind a fractured spire of ice just as a sentinel's blade arm swept through the air where he had been a second before. Sparks scattered across the ice, reflecting the red glare of the sentinel's eyes. His heart pounded, but he focused, scanning for weaknesses. The sentinels moved like a single organism, calculating and efficient, yet predictable in their patterns. Ethan grabbed a chunk of debris and hurled it. It skidded across the ice, striking one sentinel and triggering a small electrical feedback. The machine twitched, its sensors confused for a moment. That was enough. He darted forward, sliding across the ice in a controlled fall, narrowly avoiding another blade. Kael'ren hovered above in disbelief. The human's actions were reckless yet effective. Each move was calculated on instinct rather than protocol. Every risk he took seemed to amplify his chances rather than diminish them. The prince's golden eyes narrowed. No species in Virilia could withstand such odds with grace. Humans, he realized, were unpredictable in a way that made them dangerous. Ethan's mind raced. The northern plains were riddled with hazards, cracks, unstable ice, and the deep crevasse that had nearly claimed him earlier. He needed to reach a higher ridge to get a clear line to his ship, but the sentinels had anticipated this. Two of them blocked the path, their blade arms crossing in perfect synchronization. He crouched, feeling the ice beneath him tremble. Then, with a human laugh, half mad, half defiant, he dove sideways, using the momentum to slide under the crossing blades. Sparks flew as metal scraped ice, and one sentinel sensor array flickered from the shock. Ethan rolled to his feet, eyes blazing. "Come on," he muttered, adrenaline making his limbs feel lighter than usual. The ridge loomed ahead, but reaching it would mean crossing a field of jagged ice shards. Ethan assessed the distance, his human mind calculating risk with a speed no alien could match. He grabbed a broken panel, testing its strength. It would hold just barely. He ran, hopping from shard to shard, each landing sending shards cracking beneath his boots. One slip and he would be impaled. One slip and his chance of survival vanished. A sentinel lunged, its arms slicing toward him. Ethan rolled, slammed the panel into the machine and sent it spinning into a shard of ice. The sentinel toppled, but others closed in, faster this time. He realized brute force would not win this fight. He needed creativity, something that no alien calculation could predict. Scanning the frozen ground, he spotted remnants of the ship's energy core, partially exposed from the crash. If he could rig it to emit a pulse, it might temporarily disable the sentinels. Time was short. He pried loose wires, twisted circuits, and created a makeshift conductor with scraps of metal and ice. Sparks flew. His fingers burned. Frostbitten skin tore under pressure. Still he smiled. Pain was temporary. Survival was everything. The pulse discharged. Blue arcs of electricity danced across the ice, striking the sentinels. Their glowing eyes flickered, limbs spasmed, and they staggered back, temporarily paralyzed. Ethan didn't wait. He sprinted, sliding across the ice as if born to defy it. Each second mattered. Every move could be his last. Kael'ren's chest tightened. He had expected fear, despair, perhaps even screams. Instead he saw joy. Ethan laughed aloud, sprinting through danger as if it were a playground. The human's courage, intelligence, and sheer audacity left the prince both unsettled and fascinated. This was not survival, it was triumph in the face of annihilation. Ethan reached the ridge and glanced back. The sentinels were recovering, more coordinated now. The pulse had only bought him moments, but those moments were enough. He pulled a cable from the wreckage, creating a trip line across the slope. As the sentinels advanced, the line triggered, sending one sprawling into a jagged shard of ice. Another, miscalculating, tumbled down a slope, crashing against crystal spires. He didn't pause to celebrate. Momentum was life. Every step, Every decision counted. The ridge led to a vantage point where he could see his ship. It sat battered, smoking but reparable. He gritted his teeth, preparing to sprint the final stretch. But then the ice groaned beneath him. A deep crevasse, previously hidden, opened with a terrifying crack. He froze. A misstep here would mean death, a frozen tomb waiting to swallow him whole. The sentinels advanced, relentless and unyielding. Ethan's breath came in short gasps. Frost stung his face. Pain shot through his legs from the repeated leaps and slides. And yet he smiled. He always smiled in moments like this. Humans did not thrive by shrinking from danger. They thrived by facing it, by finding hope and joy even when the world demanded fear. Ethan took a running leap. The gap yawned beneath him, freezing wind tearing at his coat. For a heartbeat, he hung in the air, suspended between life and death, between human ingenuity and alien perfection. Kael'ren's eyes widened. The human might make it. The prince had never felt uncertainty like this, not for any machine or army. And yet, here it was, a fragile human, laughing and alive, challenging the laws of Virilia itself. Ethan landed. Ice cracked beneath him, but he held steady. Behind him, the sentinels hesitated, recalculating, unsure how to respond to such unpredictable courage. And in that hesitation lay his chance. He exhaled, heart racing, frost and blood streaking his face, but alive. The ridge was only the first obstacle. Ahead, the plain stretched to his ship, fraught with more dangers he could not yet see. Ethan Marlowe, human, laughed aloud. The sentinels would not give up. The next trial awaited. Ethan crouched behind a jagged crystal ridge, frost burning his cheeks, eyes scanning the advancing sentinels. They were relentless, moving with perfect coordination like parts of a single organism. Most would panic, frozen by the thought of facing unstoppable machines. But Ethan Marlowe was not most. He took a deep breath, fingers working rapidly on the improvised circuitry he had scavenged from his damaged ship. Sparks flew as he connected wires, wrapped them around chunks of metal, and fashioned a crude magnetic pulse emitter. It wasn't perfect, it might not even work, but humans thrived on doing the impossible and he had no choice. Failure meant death. The first sentinel lunged, its blade arms slicing the air where Ethan had just been. He rolled, barely avoiding the strike, and sent a shard of ice flying into its sensor array. The machine faltered and Ethan's pulse emitter discharged. Blue arcs of energy danced across the ice, striking the sentinels in a perfect chain. Sparks exploded from their limbs, their eyes flickered and dimmed. For the first time the machines hesitated. Ethan didn't waste a moment. Using the temporary paralysis, he sprinted across the ice, sliding under the nearest sentinel and kicking debris into its chest to send it staggering back. He felt his heart hammering, breath ragged, but adrenaline sharpened his mind. Each move was calculated, yet daring. One wrong step, one miscalculation and his story ended here. Kael'ren hovered above, eyes wide with disbelief. Humans had survived falls, avalanches and frozen plains. They had evaded traps, outwitted probability itself. And now they turned the aliens' technology against them. The prince's pride in his species wavered. Humans were unpredictable, audacious and, most alarmingly, clever. Ethan reached the edge of the next ice field. The sentinels were starting to recover. Their red eyes glowed brighter, limbs twitching with renewed aggression. He couldn't outrun them forever. He had to think faster. He scanned the frozen terrain. Jagged crystal spires rose like teeth from the ice. A network of natural trenches wound through the plains, barely visible under snow. An idea struck. He would lead the sentinels into the traps of the land itself. Humans were small, but their minds saw solutions larger than their bodies. Ethan ran in a zigzag, baiting the first sentinel toward a trench. As it lunged, he vaulted onto a frozen ledge and triggered a collapse with a well-placed kick. Ice shards crashed down, pinning the machine's leg. Another followed, stepping into a natural fissure that twisted and crushed its frame. One by one he used ingenuity over force, brains over brute strength. Kael'ren's tentacles twitched with frustration and awe. Every move the human made defied expectation. Each sentinel that fell to clever manipulation of terrain, improvised tools, or sheer boldness demonstrated a principle the prince had never considered. Humans were not fragile. They were formidable in ways aliens could not predict. But then came the real test. Two sentinels, larger and faster than the rest, had flanked him. They moved in perfect synchrony, cutting off his only path to the ship. Ethan's pulse emitter had limited charges. The ice field offered few options. Panic would have gripped anyone else. He smiled, blood and frost streaking his face. Panic had no place in survival. He noticed a shard of ship hull lodged in the ice, angled toward a reflective crystal spire. With lightning speed he ripped a cable from the wreckage, looping it around the shard. As the sentinels charged, he tripped a makeshift line, sending the shard flying into the first sentinel, knocking it off balance. The second stumbled over the edge of a fissure, sliding helplessly into a frozen crevasse. Ethan breathed hard, the pulse of his heart echoing in his ears. His hands were numb, his legs screamed with fatigue, yet he had outwitted creatures far larger and stronger than himself. Each success came from quick thinking, improvisation, and courage, the hallmarks of humans that made Kael'ren's species uncomfortable. The prince's golden eyes followed him closely. He could not deny the pattern. Humans, even alone and outnumbered, could think in ways no alien calculation predicted. They combined bravery, creativity, and relentless willpower to survive. And they did so with joy. Each laugh, each defiant grin, each spark of cunning amplified the alien prince's astonishment. Ethan glanced toward the ship. Smoke curled from its damaged hull, but the engines flickered with life. He had made it farther than anyone could have predicted. Yet danger lingered. The larger sentinels were regrouping, scanning for his position. One misstep and the northern plains would become a tomb. He had survived every hazard so far, but the next challenge would demand more than courage, it would demand genius. He clenched his fists, feeling the cold bite deep into his bones, blood mixing with frost. This was not just a fight to survive, it was a statement. Every move, every risk, every spark of laughter shouted, "Humans do not bend. Humans do not surrender. Humans thrive where others fail." Kael'ren's chest tightened. The humans' defiance, joy, and ingenuity were alien concepts, yet they worked. Survival was no longer about raw power or precise protocols, it was about daring, intelligence, and the unyielding human spirit. Ethan's eyes narrowed on the final stretch to his ship. The ice field ended, the plains widened, but the sentinels would not relent. The northern wind tore at him, snow stinging his face, yet he smiled. One more test remained. One more impossible obstacle stood between him and salvation. And as the two massive sentinels advanced, moving faster than before, Ethan took a deep breath, readying his next improvisation. He had faced death, frost, machines, and doubt, but he had never faced fear that could stop him. Not now. Not ever. Above, Kael'ren watched, silent, stunned, and unwilling to look away. The human's journey was far from over. The next move would either be genius, or disaster. Ethan's breath tore through the icy air, clouding in front of his face, his limbs shaking from frost and fatigue. The two massive sentinels advanced like living blades, their crimson eyes fixed, their movements precise and lethal. The plains ahead offered no cover, only jagged crystal spires and frozen fissures. One misstep and the ice would claim him. One wrong move and death would be instantaneous. He crouched low, scanning. There had to be a way. Humans thrived where others failed because they saw solutions where the impossible seemed to dominate. His mind raced through every scrap of knowledge he had: physics, engineering, improvisation, probability. Each second was precious. The sentinels closed in. Ethan spotted a ridge rising to his left, sharp but climbable. If he could draw the sentinels toward the ridge, he could use the uneven terrain to slow them, forcing them to stumble on the ice and crystal shards. But to lure them, he needed a distraction, a device that would make them focus on something other than him. His eyes flicked to his toolkit. He pulled out a magnetic pulsimeter, nearly spent, and connected it to a piece of conductive ice he had shaped earlier. Sparks flew as the electricity arced, sending a pulse into the nearest sentinel. Its sensors flickered, limbs twitching unpredictably. Perfect. He sprinted toward the ridge, sliding over frozen spires, feeling frostbite biting his fingers and toes, pain lancing through every muscle. Every step was life or death. One sentinel lunged as he neared the base of the ridge. Ethan dove, rolling through a patch of snow, and sent a jagged shard flying into its chest. It stumbled, but the second one adapted quickly, advancing with terrifying speed. He had no time to think in linear steps. Humans thrived in chaos. Instinct and ingenuity had to merge. He grabbed a frozen cable from the wreckage and looped it over a crystal spire at just the right angle. When the sentinel approached, its foot caught the cable. It pitched forward, crashing into the ice with a sound that echoed across the plains. The first sentinel, now recovering, turned, sensing danger, but it was too late. The ridge was within reach. Ethan climbed, legs trembling, lungs burning. Ice cut through his gloves. Blood ran down his arms, freezing instantly. He reached the top and looked down at the sentinels below. They moved with speed and coordination, but the uneven terrain slowed them. His improvisations, his courage, his determination, they had worked. He had turned his disadvantages into weapons. But victory wasn't guaranteed. The larger sentinel, taller, faster, stronger, still advanced. It lunged toward the ridge, cutting off Ethan's path to the ship. He couldn't outrun it. He had to think bigger. Ethan scanned the surroundings and spotted the ship's exposed energy core, partially functional despite the crash. A plan formed instantly. If he could channel the core's energy into the icy ground, it could create a massive magnetic field, throwing the sentinel off balance long enough for him to reach the ship. The risk was enormous. A miscalculation could destroy the ship, fry him, or fail entirely. But humans thrived on impossible odds. He connected wires, directing energy into the ice. Sparks leapt, arcs of electricity danced across frozen surfaces. The sentinel lunged, claws extended. The pulse hit the ice. Blue energy flared, the ground vibrating violently. The sentinel's legs locked, sensors frying in a cascade of sparks. It toppled, crashing against crystal spires, frozen in a tableau of defeat. Ethan exhaled, heart hammering. His hands shook, muscles trembling, yet he smiled. The impossible had been done. He had faced creatures far stronger than himself and prevailed through courage, intellect, and audacity. Every bruise, every frostbitten finger, every drop of blood had been worth it. Kael'ren hovered above, eyes wide, golden gaze fixed on the human who had outwitted perfection. Humans were not supposed to survive like this, not supposed to face annihilation with laughter and still win. And yet here he was, a single human, laughing, standing triumphant over machines designed for domination. Joy, courage, and ingenuity had rewritten the rules of survival. Ethan reached the final stretch to his ship. Smoke curled from the damaged hull, but the engines flickered. He climbed aboard, slamming the hatch behind him. Frost clung to his hair and skin, blood mixing with ice, yet his grin never faltered. He powered up the systems, sparks and steam hissing from exposed conduits. From above, Kael'ren watched in stunned silence. The humans' victory was not brute force. It was creativity, fearlessness, and sheer willpower. They thrived where others failed, finding opportunity in chaos, and turning impossible odds into triumph. The prince's chest tightened. The lesson was clear. Humans were more than resilient. They were extraordinary. Ethan sat at the helm, hands steady despite fatigue. He didn't feel invincible. He felt alive, aware of every risk, every hazard, and every moment he had cheated death. And that awareness, that defiance, that joy made him unstoppable. He activated the ship, engines humming, systems stabilizing. One more challenge remained, escaping the northern plains before the sentinels could recover. The ground trembled beneath him. The sentinels were moving again, faster, coordinated, relentless. But Ethan's mind was calm, focused, alive. Humans did not cower. Humans did not surrender. Humans thrived in the face of annihilation. He adjusted the ship's trajectory, taking advantage of every ridge, fissure, and reflective surface, using ingenuity and courage to weave through obstacles. Each second was critical. One misstep would mean death, yet each calculated risk brought him closer to survival. Kael'ren's tentacles twitched involuntarily. The human was not merely surviving, he was dominating through intelligence, audacity, and joy. The prince had expected fear, despair, or surrender. Instead, he saw mastery, defiance, and laughter echoing across the frozen plains. Ethan's ship lifted off, skimming the surface, engines roaring to life. The sentinels, now regrouped, could only watch, powerless, as the human who should have perished escaped against impossible odds. And as the ship climbed toward the horizon, Ethan looked down at the ice and snow below, heart pounding, blood and frost mixing on his face, and laughed aloud. The northern plains had tested him, tried to break him, and failed. He had turned the trial into triumph, but he knew this was only the beginning. The universe was full of dangers greater than sentinels, challenges bigger than ice, and odds that no one else could survive. Yet he would face them all. Humans always did. And Kael'ren, the Prince of Virelia, watched silently, awe and disbelief battling in his chest, knowing that he had witnessed something that would change the galaxy's understanding of humans forever. The next challenge loomed beyond the horizon, and Ethan was ready. Ethan Marlowe sat at the helm of his ship, frost still clinging to his hair and blood streaked across his face, but his hands moved steadily over the controls. Below, the northern plains stretched endlessly, jagged crystal spires gleaming like teeth beneath the fading twin suns. The sentinels had been defeated, or at least temporarily neutralized, but their presence still lingered in his mind. One misstep could mean death. One wrong calculation could erase everything. Yet he felt no fear. He never had. Humans survived by acting, by improvising, by facing impossibility and smiling in the face of annihilation. That smile, the one that had carried him through ice, fire and machine, was not arrogance. It was determination. Joy in the fight. Courage in the impossible. Kael'ren, the Virelian prince, hovered in orbit above the plains, unseen by Ethan but utterly captivated. He had watched humans survive disasters no being in Virelia could have predicted. Falls that should have shattered bones, avalanches that should have buried them, sentinels designed for perfect execution. All had failed against one man's ingenuity and audacity. And through it all Ethan had laughed. The prince's golden eyes narrowed. That laughter had shattered centuries of Virelian doctrine. For Kael'ren, fear had always been rational, joy an unnecessary weakness. Yet here was proof that humans were not weak. They were unpredictable, resourceful, and astonishingly brave. Joy had become a weapon. Defiance a shield. Courage, a force that no algorithm could calculate. Ethan guided the ship toward the distant horizon, toward open skies and the unknown. He was tired, every muscle screaming, fingers stiff with frostbite, yet he felt alive in a way he never had before. The plains had tested him, and he had triumphed not through luck, not through power, but through intelligence, courage, and sheer stubborn will. As he glanced at the damaged console, he realized that the human ability to improvise was what had saved him. The pulsimeter, the trip cables, the clever use of terrain, none of it was standard procedure. None of it could have been predicted. Humans thrived because they thought differently, adapted faster, and embraced risk with a sense of hope that no machine could mimic. Suddenly the sensors flickered. A faint signal pulsed from a nearby ridge. Ethan's instinct screamed caution. He hadn't survived this far by ignoring danger. Yet curiosity pushed him forward. The ridge revealed not another threat, but a human refugee, a small pod that had been lost in the crash, a life hanging by a thread. Without hesitation, Ethan altered his course and guided the ship toward it. Humans did not leave others behind. Compassion was part of courage. Kael'ren's chest tightened as he watched. The human risked his fragile life for another human being, even after all he had endured. Aliens valued efficiency. Life was a calculation. But humans fought for each other even when it made no practical sense. That willingness to act morally, to act heroically despite danger, made them extraordinary. Ethan reached the pod, pried it open, and lifted the refugee inside. Small, pale, and shivering, the survivor's eyes widened at him. Ethan smiled, warm and genuine, and handed over a blanket. "You're safe now," he said simply. That single gesture carried weight beyond words. Humans did not only survive, they uplifted others while doing it, creating hope where despair could have taken root. Kael'ren felt a pang in his chest. He had studied countless species, observed countless civilizations, and none had struck him like this. Joy, courage, ingenuity, and morality, humans wielded these like weapons, yet they never flaunted them. They acted not for glory but because it was their nature. And that nature had just outshone an empire. The northern plains faded beneath them as Ethan piloted the ship skyward. He glanced once more at the frozen landscape, where jagged spires caught the last light of the setting suns. He had survived the impossible. He had defeated machines designed to be unstoppable. He had saved another life while doing it. And he had done so with joy intact, unbroken, unshakable. Kael'ren's thoughts swirled. His pride in his empire, his certainty in rules and order, had been shattered by a single human. One fragile, audacious, brilliant human had rewritten the rules. For the first time he wondered, perhaps strength was not raw power, nor discipline, nor perfection. Perhaps strength was heart, courage, and the audacity to defy destiny itself. Ethan leaned back in the cockpit, exhaustion washing over him, but a spark of satisfaction gleamed in his eyes. He had survived what no one thought possible, and in doing so he had proved something far greater, that humans were more than survivors, they were beacons of hope, ingenuity, and moral courage. The ship cleared the atmosphere, stars stretching infinitely around them. The northern plains disappeared below, but their challenge remained engraved in Ethan's mind. He knew the galaxy was vast, full of dangers far worse than sentinels or icy plains. Yet he would face them. Humans always faced them. And they always found a way to triumph. Kael'ren watched the human disappear into the void, feeling a profound mix of awe, humility, and something dangerously close to admiration. He had seen what humans could do when cornered, when tested, when pushed to the very edge. They could laugh while standing on the brink of death. They could defy logic, probability, and expectation. They could shine when all else failed. The prince realized, finally, that humans were not just a species to observe, they were a force to respect, perhaps even fear. Their joy, courage, and ingenuity had overturned certainty itself. And Kael'ren knew he would never forget the human who had laughed, fought, and triumphed against impossible odds. Ethan Marlowe leaned forward, eyes on the stars, heart steady, hands ready. Ahead lay unknown dangers, new worlds, and impossible challenges. And yet he smiled. He was human. He had survived. And humanity would continue to defy, to endure, and to shine. The galaxy had witnessed his courage, and its echo would linger. Humans were extraordinary. Humans could not be predicted. Humans could not be tamed. Humans could defy destiny itself. And somewhere above, Kael'ren the alien prince, once certain of all rules, could do nothing but watch and wonder what humans might achieve next.